All right, it looks like we've reached a critical mass, so let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny Hermes. I am a member of Developer Relations here at Google. I don't know if you can see that. It says Developer Relations. It's our nifty logo on our documentation, if you recognize it. I'm the guy that supports you all on the forum and gets your requests to the product teams and figures out everything else. I also, on the side, like to work on the client libraries and things like that that make your life easier. So I want to get started here. We had some questions from Caroline McLean that I want to let her ask. And then from there, we'll open the floor for more questions. And you know, who knows? This may be the shortest weekly hangout we've had so far, based on the questions that I've seen leading up to it. But who knows? This is also the most people we've had at once. So so let's see how it goes. So Caroline, go ahead and ask your question.
All right. Let me start off with the first one. I think is the most critical to us is. We are a software as a service, and we support many merchants, and we're starting with a single merchant and their existing account and information. And the last thing we want to do is put their account in a bad state from testing some of this functionality. What's the best way to start our testing?
Yeah, so I don't know how much you or your team have gotten a chance to check out our docs, but our docs at developers.google.com/shopping-content are really a great resource. In particular, the Getting Started page lists some options that you have with respect to this. The first one is sort of not the best way to keep from bad things happening from bad data quality, but the first is what's called a warnings parameter. And if you simply append just the word warnings as a query parameter with no actual parameter value to the end of any API request that you're making, then you'll get back warnings in the API response. So you won't necessarily have errors, but you know, something where you don't include an attribute that we recommend, or you have an attribute that might be too short. Something that's more powerful and stronger for you as you're testing out implementation is what's called the dry run parameter. The dry run parameter can be sent simultaneously with the warnings parameter, or it can be sent as is. And it's sent the exact same way, just the keyword dry-run appended as a query parameter with no query value on the end of every request. And when you send a request dry run, your inserts aren't actually inserted, your updates aren't actually updated, and your deletes aren't actually deleted. So what happens is the server validates the request, makes sure it looks exactly how it should and that it would be accepted, and then it gives you the simulated response. So that is the perfect way for you to do testing. It is literally a sandbox, literally a dry run. One small caveat there, if you try to delete or update an item that does not exist, it won't. The dry run side will not actually tell you it's an error, because in order to make dry run fast, and in order to make it like really a sandbox, we don't actually check against your current data for updates and deletes. We really just check the format of the response, that it will work as an update or a delete. But that's a very small caveat when you're doing your when you're just getting started, like you said, with a proof of concept with the first merchant. I hope that is a sufficient answer for you.
No, that's awesome. Thanks. I had not found, I'm not sure I found that set of documentation. I'm kind of all over the place.
Sure.
We're using the .NET wrapper.
Yes.
And I did see that in the DLL, both the dry run as well as the, what was the other parameter?
Yeah, so I'm actually updating the .NET client library is a little behind some of the other languages, and there are not really good ways. So I checked it out. Dry run and warnings are really only enabled for queries, which doesn't help you, right? You don't care about a query because a query isn't actually going to do anything.
Right, it's not going to hurt anything.
So I'm enabling that. I'm changing some of the functions. Right now, the only signature for the insert function on the service object takes an entry and a feed. But in reality, we don't really need a feed for inserting. That that might be true for some of the other APIs in the family of GData APIs.
Right.
But in our API, it isn't that relevant. So I was not a part of the original implementation, and I have been submitting patches, for much of 2012. But hopefully in the next week or two, we'll see a lot more patches, and then I'm going to release a developer's guide. There's a developer's guide right now for Python and Java to give you an idea of what it'll look like. And there's one for PHP that will probably be published this week or early next week. And so .NET is sort of last in line. And it's not because I don't like .NET. It's just because I'm not as good with .NET. I don't have a working Windows instance at work. I have one at home, but I never touch it because I prefer Linux. Sorry, guys. So I've been developing C# in Mono on my Mac at work, and it just takes a little longer. But it's something I appreciate, and it's something I've really looked at recently. So I'll say for sending dry run and sending warnings parameters, you can actually specify using the native URL object type. You can actually specify the URL in your requests explicitly, and that may be the way to go temporarily, or you could just wait till I get this fixed out. I mean, I don't know what your timeline is, but I'm trying to get this done as quickly as possible because I'm starting to prepare for Google I/O, and that's about to take up my entire life. So if I don't get this done quick, it will be July 1st before it gets done.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yes. So did you have any other questions? I think you had a third one, right?
I think I had multiples. I didn't write them down because I gave them to you.
I can check. Let me mute myself.
No, you sent me the answer to the other one, which was how to support some of those fields that are not in the wrapper yet, like the sale price.
Let me address that for posterity and for the other viewers. So her other question was, is the sale price field in there, and I can't just find it? And if it's not, what do I do? So the answer to the first question, it was no, it's not actually implemented yet as part of the library. It's one of the newer attributes, so it wasn't part of the original implementation. And the answer to the second question is you can still send it, but it has to be sent as a custom attribute. So in our Getting Started page, we do describe a little bit how to use custom attributes. It's in the SC namespace, structured content namespace. And the name of the attribute is just attribute, and you can send units and the actual name as a keyword, as well as the type as a keyword, and then of course you can send your value. So since SCP sale price is not enabled, you can just send SC attribute with the name of sale price and still use units, US dollars or pounds or any other value, euros. And then, of course, send the dollar amount. So that's just, like I said, for posterity. I'm going to let you ask your other question, and I'm going to actually go on mute real quick while I type and look for the rest of your post.
Thank you. Just to add to that, too, if anybody's curious, Danny responded to that in the forum, so you can see the full response with the code sample in the forum if anybody else wanted it. I'm trying to remember what the other one was, too, so hopefully Danny will find it faster than I do. Oh, I do have one that's not on there, too, which is just one of the questions I saw somebody recently post was about inventory running out, and, I think I read somewhere that as long as when they come to the page it says it's out of inventory, it's okay, but everything I've been reading recently says, no, get it out of your feed, ASAP, and I'm not sure, to what degree that's critical, meaning, if it's gone in 24 hours, is that okay, or does it really need to be gone the minute, inventory is out, either automatically through the API?
Yeah, well, so I can't comment directly on that because I don't specifically work side by side with the data quality folks, and I don't like to comment on that stuff anyhow. But what I will say, it's relatively easy for you to do. That is the great thing about the API. If you're used to the feeds files world, then in order to change the inventory for one product, you got to send your entire feed again. But you don't have to do that here. So if you make some hooks with either your merchant sending you new data, or if you have some internal tracking system, if you make some hooks, you can instantly send the update the second it happens, and it's no skin off your back. So it's something that's easy to stay up to date with. And there will be penalties if it is out of sync. I don't know what the time range is. I would say 24 hours is reasonable, but I can't guarantee that. Maybe it's something that happens on a schedule. So if you do it at noon and it just so happens, instead of having 24 hours, you only had 3. I don't really know how it works, and it's something that it's a level of functionality that is perfectly enabled by the API for you to be able to address it the second it happens. I do have your other questions. Let me zoom in on this so people can see. Hopefully that's big enough. Okay. So you say you're relatively new. You liked the overview. Bulk inserts. And also policy infringement errors and things like that. Bulk inserts is another thing which the more you read the documentation, the more you'll learn. But we support batching. So what a batch is, typically when you send inserts and updates, you're using the Atom entry XML element to send everything. So there's actually an Atom feed element, which you can send a list of entry elements in to do batching. So you could send an insert, an update, and a delete all at the same time, or you could send hundreds of them all at the same time. From what I hear, people who do batch inserts, 150 products is about the most you can get in one batch because we cap it at 1 meg. But it's very easy to do bulk inserts using batching. But there are some size limitations. Your other question about registering for...
Hey, Danny, can I just back you up on one more clarifying question on that? So, and I'm pretty sure I saw on the forums people asking to up that limit, and it doesn't seem like it's an easy process. Seems easier to try and batch it on your side in terms of...
or a difficult process. It's that this API is part of a family of APIs, and to make a change for just us is not really that possible. But also, in addition to that, you want to keep the API fast. The average response time for you to get your response back from us is 300 milliseconds. So the larger we make the request, the longer it takes to return those responses, A, and B, the greater the chances that it can drop in between, or that some packets can drop, right? So it's actually more beneficial to cap these batches at something that's reasonable given the pipelines that's sending the data.
I guess I didn't realize it was a synchronous process too. So everything's synchronous, meaning you get your immediate response.
Yes, and
Okay.
it's formatted in exactly the same way that it was sent, and except there are a few extra attributes. Like we don't ask you to send a published attribute, but we give you back a published attribute for when the item was published. Can you comment on what you mean by how to register for and process policy infringement errors programmatically?
I saw some event handlers, but it may have been more in the Google API part than the actual shopping API. But so I think you may have answered it there, that maybe when you do your batch insert, would it come back and say, this product is lacking this, whatever policy brand. Maybe it doesn't have its brand, or it doesn't have.
Right.
Would those be immediate, or is there some way
that's so if it's a required attribute, then it will come back immediately. And if you send an individual request, you'll get the error in that individual request. If it's in a batch request, and some of the other ones succeed, you'll still get successes for those, and you'll just get an error block in the one that failed. There is a second batch or a second round of processing, let's say, that happens. And in that round, some other errors can be found, and so there are other ways to deal with that. That we actually have a new data quality feed where you can see which items you have that are in violation of certain data quality policies.
Cool. Is there documentation on that data quality feed?
There is. On the left bar, you can see all the main topics in the little drop-down boxes.
Awesome.
Okay, so I think that wraps up the questions you have, yeah?
I think you're right.
Okay, so I will stop stop sharing that screen. And I will answer Mary Kate's question. Mary Kate, do you not have a microphone? I take it she does not. Okay, she says no. So her question in chat, for those who can't see the chat bar on the side, she says, I know you can't call within a specific category. I was curious if there's a way to hone in on categories another way. Some areas I'm interested in are great with queries, but others are incredibly cluttered with unrelated products. It's incredibly time-consuming to clean those areas up. Category restriction would be the best solution. So this seems to be a search API question, not a content API question. Is this correct? I'm waiting for her to respond in chat. Okay, so I will address it shortly, but this was mainly intended for content API community today, but many of the content API community also uses the search API, so it's a relevant question nonetheless. So as you mentioned, it's not possible to make requests by category for the public version of the search API. That is the search API for shopping. So sometimes you do have unrelated products, and that's unfortunate. I don't really have any solution for you for how to use category, other than if you do sort of have an idea of what the category is, then there are relevant keywords that you can use to strengthen your query. If you are able to obtain things like a GTIN, a global trade ID number for your items, that can also really strengthen your search results. But it's a feature we're certainly aware of, and it's something that we've considered. But I don't know that support for searching and refining searches by category is something that's going to be enabled. So I'm sorry about that. Yes, you're welcome. She says thank you in the chat. So Andrew also, for those who can't see the chat, while I was talking about batch inserts, mentioned that you can do lots of deletes as well in the same batch request. Since deletes tend to be small, you can often get more than 150 deletes, because to send a delete in batch, you really only need 2 XML attributes, one being the attribute that says your batch operation is delete, and the other being the ID of the item you're deleting. And he's also saying you can have more than one request sent out at the same time. So even though your batch, even if you can only send 150 items in one batch request, you can potentially fire off 5 of those batch requests at the same time. But there's a caveat there that he didn't mention that I will, that there is rate limiting for queries per second as well. So if you send too many queries in parallel, then you may get some of them rejected for that rate limiting. So that wraps up all the pending questions and comments we have. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I have my usual 4.
Sure.
Approximately. On some of these attributes, like age group, you're showing all lowercase letters for those. You want those sent in all lowercase?
Yeah. So the attribute names are going to be explicit. That is exactly how they are in the documentation. You're actually referring to the attribute name, not the value of the attribute, yes?
Well, I mean the value, because things you have, like in the age group, you have kids and adults or condition, things like that.
Yeah, so that I believe kids and adult are the only accepted values there. I don't know off the top of my head. Let me get back to you. Let me write this down real quick.
Okay. I just noticed when I post products, right, and when I look at the listing in Merchant Center, we're sending some stuff that's got like a capitalized first letter, like if it's a color or something. But next to that, you'll see something like age group, and of course, I'm sending that all lowercase.
Right.
I don't know if that matters or not. But
I don't know that it matters most of the time, but for something like age group, there is a predetermined set of accepted attributes, and I don't know if case is relevant there, but that's actually going to be the same irrespective if you're using feeds or if you're using the content API. It's the same data quality rules, I guess, that apply to those values. So I don't know off the top of my head. I have written this question down, and I'm going to try to get it answered within the next hour or two, and then
okay.
I'll
I guess maybe I was more concerned just because how if you feel like this is customer facing eventually in product search results, so you're just sort of wondering, is the customer going to end up seeing some
So
stuff is uppercase, some stuff is lowercase?
right. So I don't believe age group is actually customer facing. I think that's more of an attribute that enhances the quality of our search results.
Right.
And the ability to categorize those products based on age group. So.
Okay. So another thing is going back to the enjoyment we have with sale price and sale price effective. So I looked up in the product feed specifications, and they're showing sale underscore price and sale underscore price underscore effective underscore date. And you say that's showing over there in the G namespace, but you're saying submit those in the SC namespace.
Yeah, well, so the G namespace is for if you want to send an XML feeds file. It's not a namespace. I mean, and calling it G or SC is kind of arbitrary, right? Those are just aliases for an actual XML spec. But that namespace it doesn't have anything to do with the content API.
Yeah, as far as using the .NET Client library, when I submit it, it's going to automatically just add SC to the tag itself.
It would if sale price were enabled, but it's not.
I've never done a custom one before, so I'm not sure.
I posted to the forum with sample code. So there is on each product entry there's an attribute called custom attributes. That's camel case, so capital custom, capital A in attributes, and that's an extension list property, or I think that's what it's called. It's extension property or something like this. And so what you want to do, you want to instantiate a custom attribute object. Okay. And there are 3 constructors. There's the constructor with no arguments, and then you can set the attributes after constructing it, right? There's a constructor with 2 arguments, which takes a name and a value of the attribute, and then there's a constructor which takes all 4 arguments, name, value, unit, and type.
Okay.
So you could easily use the 4th one and send type as null for sale price, because there is no type for sale price, but there is a unit. Or you could use the other one where you just instantiate the value in the name, and then after the fact set the unit to whatever your units are on your price.
I'm not sure if the data quality people are going to be upset with me or not, because what I'm doing now is I'm monitoring when an item goes on sale. As soon as one of my merchants marks it on sale, I immediately post an update with the sale price as the price of the item.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Sale price and sale price effective date are more for local stores. For the kinds of things that you can have via local search and things like that. We don't actually have sale price and sale price effective date on our docs for the main items feed. We really only include them on the local products feed documentation. But there are many similarities between the two.
I was just more confused about if they go to review the product and they arrive on the landing page, they're going to want to see the price. If this is the item is currently on sale, they want that to be reflected. It has to be reflected either as the price or as the sale price inside of the effective date, right? Or they're going to reject the product.
Right. Yeah, and that's why a lot of times a sale price and a sale price effective date are more relevant towards brick and mortar stores rather than online stores. Online stores where you can just kind of push a button and things change, whereas brick and mortar, you at least need to go the whole day with the price, or usually at least.
Is it your understanding that when we do put the sale price and sale price effective date in, that we can leave the price attribute as the list price? So even if we're showing the price, let's say we're inside the effective date and we give a sale price that's lower than list, and we leave the list price at whatever the regular price is. When they arrive on the landing page of the product and it reflects the sale price, they're okay with that list price still being entered as the regular price, right?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to check with you on that one. I'm going to say it's likely no. It's likely no that that sort of gives you protection like that. I think a sale price effective date is more like a forward-looking attribute rather than a guard against your current state.
So what do you want us to submit for price then? Because right now the .NET Client library only gives price. That's all it gives you.
Right. Submit the current price. So like I said, sale price is more like a forward-looking thing. So like, let's say it goes on sale May 5th, and you want people to know that's how you would do it. But then May 5th, when the price changes, set it to the price that it is. But I'll double check on that for you.
Yeah, Danny,
Okay.
can you post that when you find it out? Because that was not my impression. I thought my impression was that was to help you with rapidly changing items to help you manage that.
So actually, another thing that many people in here may already know, but you won't know yet, Caroline, because you're new. Well, no, it's not something that's really visible, or it's not that visible. But we have something called the Express Pipeline. So when you send a change, when you update a product, not a new product, but you're updating an existing product, and you change, it's a very limited set of attributes, like availability, sale price, quantity, things like that, things that are really easy to validate and really easy to check differences. It goes in the Express Pipeline. So I mentioned before there are sort of two stages of validation on our side. One is the initial validation when we're saying whether we accept or reject the request, but then there's another one where we're sort of checking things in more detail. So in the case that you're only checking the price, we're able to bypass that second stage of checking, or not bypass it, but we're really able to speed it up, to turn it into Express mode. And in those cases, your updates can go in within minutes. But for the majority of cases, it's not always like that. But sale price doesn't enhance or decrease the speed with which the update is going forward.
Okay. I guess I programmed that right by mistake. Just in
Sure.
other words, firing the current price in price, and as soon as a merchant makes a change over here, I fire it, and then as soon as it goes off sale on my system, I fire the price.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So,
you have the ability to do that because, one, your back end, and because, two, the API lets you, right?
right.
That's not always true of a merchant. But there's no reason if you're not limited by computing resources, if you're not limited by resources on our end actually allowing you to send it, there's no reason not to keep your data as up to date as you know it to be.
Okay, and number 3, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Now this has nothing to do with what I was working on, but I just noticed the behavior, and I just wanted to hear your comment on it. When I send a product up, and it looks like it shows a creation date. I'm talking about inside the Merchant Center console.
Yep. Uh-huh.
It shows a creation date. I think it shows maybe an updated date. But within like 5 minutes or 20 minutes or something, that display changes and it says posted on. And then when I pull an item query on it, the updated property shows the current date time. So if I pull it every 15 minutes, I keep getting the current date time in the updated date. Is that normal behavior?
I've never inspected that before. I'm not sure about that. This one would actually be a question for our engineers.
It doesn't matter to me in terms of what I'm trying to do. I just noticed that.
Yeah. I don't know why that would be.
I sort of compare my own internal last modified product date time to the current date time to determine whether or not I need to fire it as an update. So I'm not really using the Google data to know whether or not I need to update or not. I'm using my own internal.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that question. And
that's nice. So your application is truly RESTful. You're not reconstructing items on the fly. You're actually doing gets first before sending them back, huh?
That's correct.
Wow.
It took me 2 days and maybe 24 hours to
I admire that. That's great. I mean, like I said, that is REST. Other than the fact that we're using a post request for batch when we're not, when we're sending batch requests that do more than just insert, right? But other than that fact, it's mostly RESTful. But so the thing about it is, and on my far right here, Andrew at Zazzle can tell you, once you get to a certain size, you can't be truly RESTful. It just isn't feasible. So it's something you should consider as you get bigger, because it effectively doubles the number of requests you need to make. Not exactly, like a delete. You probably don't need to actually do a request, because in order to do the request, you need to know the item ID. So you're not going to gain anything to do the delete, right? But for subsequent updates and things like that, it may not be possible to stay RESTful. I admire it right now, I do, but it's something to keep in mind going forward. It may not be scalable.
I did program it to monitor the quota limits and then track the QPS and then refire. I did all that programming,
That's
so it
awesome.
will run, like you say, for a while.
More power, man.
Before it starts
to
break down.
Right.
My last question is, how can I get one of those cool developer relation Google hoodies there. You
You're
want
gonna have to
all
come
of
to
us,
you're gonna
don't
have to
you?
come to some event we host. I don't know off the top of my head. As far as I know, the only people that have them are people in DevRel. They're relatively new, but we do give swag away pretty often. So just keep your ear towards me, and maybe something will come up.
Let me know. All right, thanks a lot.
Sure. Any other questions?
Hey, Daniel.
Hey.
I got a question. Could you elaborate on, you talked about the rate limiting?
This is Aaron speaking. I
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. This is
No
Aaron.
worries.
I work with Caroline.
Oh, okay.
Is that the rate applied per login?
So you don't really think of it in terms of login. So when you send a request, you're signing it with a token. So you can get tokens. Right now there are 4 ways to get tokens with Google. You can get OAuth1 tokens, OAuth2 tokens, auth-sub tokens, or client login tokens. I think that's all. I highly recommend going with OAuth2 because the other 3 are being deprecated over the next 3 years. So it doesn't make sense to tie yourself to a ship that's not going to be a ship anymore. I'm not going to call it a sinking ship. But anyway, so there, it's not really about a login. If you were referring to a particular account, then yes, a QPS is account-based, and that would be like the account that you sign in with Google, not the merchant ID. So if you have a multi-client account and you're making requests to hundreds of sub-accounts, but with the same account, then all those requests will fall under the same limit. The limit is not that stringent. It's pretty flexible, but with any service offered to the world, you have to protect against denial of service, right? So that's just in place for us to protect against denial of service. And if you do run into it, exponential backoff is usually relatively easy, and a lot of times the QPS errors you get go away within 15 seconds or 30 seconds. There is a second bit of quota that you might be asking about. You have like a daily quota, and that one, if you get to a size enough to where you're exceeding it legitimately, just let us know and we'll increase it. But if there's anything else I didn't cover, let me know.
That does it. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if anyone looked at the Python doc that I just published last week. I'm going to doubt it based on the number of downloads and things like that. But I do strongly encourage in that doc to move to OAuth2 if you're not already there. We announced, about 12 days ago now, or maybe it's 5, either 5 or 12 days ago. I don't recall which Friday it was now. But we announced that OAuth1, auth-sub, and client login are all being deprecated as auth mechanisms for various reasons. OAuth1 just because OAuth2 is an improvement on it, and auth-sub and client login, client login is being deprecated mostly because keeping passwords in the clear is never a good idea. So, like I said, you have 3 years to make it there, but it'd be nice to start the process now. And if people work on that over the next 2 weeks and have questions at the next hangout we have on May 16th, I'll be happy to talk about them then. So do we have any other questions? Andrew, any questions from you?
I have a feature request.
Okay.
So I love the API dashboard, and especially because last week I suddenly ran into bad categories.
Okay.
Which I guess I was using old categories and they
Right.
changed, and I had to change them in the database and all that stuff. And but it went on like that for like 2 days, even though I was having about a 40% failure rate.
What went on like that?
Oh, I was like sending bad categories, like the
I got you,
behind the scenes. It wasn't until somebody noticed actually a decline in link overs that I got to check it. And I was wondering if there would be any way, like, there used to be emails that would be sent for the feed-based ones.
Yeah, so
you guys could send like a rate.
This was an issue. This was an issue that people on the forum were kind of upset about, and I kind of just said, it's out of my hands. Go to the Merchant Center forum. I don't know off the top of my head. I can update some of those threads if you like, and I'll CC you on the email when I update those threads. I don't know off the top of my head what they came up with, but the team realized there was sort of insufficient communication going forward for those. So I'll let you know if they came up with anything or what they came up with.
Yeah, I was thinking. I mean, that's like a different thing. That the problem that was happening is kind of unrelated here to my feature request. I was wondering if there would be some way that emails could be triggered at a certain error percentage or something on API requests. I realized that so with the feed-based emails, that's kind of easier for you guys because as soon as the feed's processed, you can send an email and it's all like real clear and synchronous.
Sorry. Without going into too much detail, I'll let you know that we have a big dashboard of most frequent requesters and things like that. And when people mess up something, when people introduce a bug, or when people are just getting started out and they're doing things, or hundreds of other situations, we see error rates over 90% pretty frequently. So off the top of my head, I don't know how much something like that makes sense. Maybe as an opt-in, it does. I'll certainly toss it around with the Eng team and see what they have to say. But I don't know off the top of my head if that's the best way. There might be, a better way. Like some sort of account level API where you can get sort of various stats like that. But I don't know. I don't know if an email is the best way to go about it. But I hear you. I appreciate it, and it certainly does make sense. I'm surprised you don't have a monitor for failure rate.
Well, I do now, but yeah, I don't know.
Yes,
I get a lot
every
of, like,
programmer
random
assumes he
errors,
never
so.
fails, right? That's how I am too.
Well, no, it's actually the other way around. I get a lot of like 1 per 10,000,
right?
Something like that, and
Right.
and I didn't want to be overwhelmed by those. But I know
Sure.
Google is all about statistics, and I thought maybe you guys could have like
Sure.
some cool algorithm or something that
yeah, I'll let you
tells
know.
when there's some
Right,
bug.
if you go from 95% acceptance to 60% acceptance.
Yeah. I think that's kind of how Amazon's works. Because Amazon never sends me an email unless like there's something really bad, and then they send something. But there may be human intervention on that side for all I know.
Sure.
So, but yeah.
I'll let you know how that chat goes. I'm gonna open a feature request on the external shopping-apis-list or -issues list of feature requests and bug reports and things like that. And I'll ping you with it so you can watch it. All right. Does anybody else have other questions?
There's nothing like this for Google Checkout, is there? They don't have a point person like you?
No. There are people on my team that support it, but Checkout's actually being deprecated. The API is, and there are other ones coming in place. But It's
I mean, I posted something to their code, kind of a bug report, and it just sits there. It's like the only issue, and they don't respond.
Huh. Yeah. If you want to ping that to me, I can push it through internally and see where that is. But they don't really have. They have DevRel, but they don't really have dedicated DevRel who are actively pushing the product forward, doing Hangouts, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But they are on my team. I'm part of the commerce umbrella, so pretty much anything related to commerce, I sort of tangentially know about in some way.
I just mentioned to you real briefly. If a customer goes to checkout, and let's say they're not signed into Google, right? They're going to get your shopping cart in one frame, and then in the other frame it's
There's
going to
an
be a sign-up
iframe.
form, right?
Right. Yeah.
If they hit the back button, it reloads the cart only in the upper frame and cuts off a lot of the page.
That's being changed.
Okay.
The issue there is if you do what's called a light box. I don't know if you're familiar with the term in design and development, but a light box is trying to think of a website you might have seen. Well, a lot of times sites do this with ads. When you come to their page and they want to show you an ad and nothing else, they'll put the ad in the center of the screen, and then everything else they kind of put like a black transparent background on top of, so you can see it, but it's sort of dark, and the thing in the front is light, right? So that's the light box. And so what happens with light boxes most of the time is people use an iframe to point to another page. Well, if you do that with payments, then there are some security risks that people don't actually know what page they're saying, they're signing in with and giving their credit card information to. So it's sort of it's a hard problem to get right and make really user-friendly, and it's something they're still iterating on.
But you're saying that whole display might change, or that whole process?
It's something that is not set in stone. I don't know if it'll change or not, but it is something they're always looking for ways to make better, and they're trying to think of the best way to go about it.
Okay. I just thought maybe not loading that in 2 frames would solve that. Load the card and then load the sign-in page below on the same page. But they must have had a reason why they did.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't work with that team closely, so I don't know what's been decided up till now.
Thanks.
So it seems like that's everything for today. It was a nice crowd. We even had some viewers of the Hangout outside of the Hangout earlier, which may have been some of these folks, may not. But it's the first time we've had external viewers in our third Hangout now. So it's growing, and I like to see that. So thanks everybody, and I will see you next week, or I guess 2 weeks. Cheers.
Cheers.
Annie, thanks for your help.
Sure thing.